Rural Zambia. The cultural landscape of rural Zambia, aside from a zone of about 30 miles on both sides of a hard surface road or the rail line, presents a scene which has changed little overall during the past century. The livelihood for some 65% of the rural people is based on subsistence cultivation. The villages, with the exception of that of the tribal chief, are small, with a total of 15 to 25 huts and their outbuildings. Many of the older men have several wives, often inherited when a man dies, as a single woman with her children cannot survive in the rural setting. The overall construction of the dwellings is the same: wattle and daub circular hut with thatched roof, an open-air storage food for the grain, and perhaps a tumble-down structure for a few chickens or whatever. The ground is swept clean now and then, but dust on the ground is to be expected. There are few wells, generally without cover. Women and little girls fetch the water from a creek or other supply in rusty cans or large gourds. The rural scene would seem depressing to a European, but for the natives it is the traditional way of life. Overall, little improvement is visible, and even new construction appears to be old and worn in a short time. But it functions, so it is accepted matter-of-factly. It is startling to realize that there are no cemeteries in the rural setting. The dead are placed in the bush and soon recycled by natural forces. A new structure could be built very cheaply, the material being available within a short distance. The granary constructed here will have a roof, certainly not waterproof, but in any case the supports will be eaten away by termites in 2 to 3 years, so a new one will be built along the same pattern. Some granaries for corn or millet are literally ramshackle, with no roof. Losses due to birds, rodents, etc. will be large. The men are in charge of building, but often some may leave for a few days or more to go somewhere. A woman alone could not take proper care of the homestead, but that is taken for granted in the traditional setting. On occasion, one may see a platform, in this case with harvested millet on top, and there was even a piece of plastic to cover the grain against the rain. Examination indicated that some 1/3 of the millet was molding rapidly. The prickly pear cactus that is used in some parts of Mexico for food was not acceptable to the natives, in spite of showing how to prepare it. The cassava grown has to be soaked after harvest to leach out the poison. Any small watercourse or stagnant pool will do for that purpose. The plant grows well even on rather marginal soils, but has a low nutritional value, being mostly starch. But anything is better than hunger, affecting especially the children. Malnutrition is widespread in rural tropical Africa, and with rapid population increase, it will persist for a long time. After soaking, the cassava is laid out to dry for a day or two. As could be expected, dust and dirt will settle on it, but it is accepted as inevitable. Attempting to point out that food should be handled in a sanitary manner will lead nowhere. Indeed, in the native languages, there is no term available for the word sanitary, and explaining the relevant problems through an interpreter will likely to be in vain. The dried cassava is ground into flour in a mortar, and again placed on the ground on some woven mats with more dirt around. The hut in the photo shows an interesting problem. In the 1970s, the government has decided that instead of the traditional round huts, the rural folks should build a rectangular structure of mud bricks. The order was followed so-so, but none of the builders accustomed to erect roofs over round huts has figured out how to thatch a rectangular building. So much for progress. The beast of burden in the rural setting is the woman, who performs at least 70% of all the work: food production, fetching the water, firewood, cooking, taking care of the numerous children, etc. The single tool used for cultivation is the short-handled home-made hoe, forcing the woman to work in a bent-over position. The reason for that is that rural women have to carry the smallest child on their backs for nursing and protection. Being commonly barefoot causes many health problems, including wounds, intestinal worms, etc. When walking to whatever task, the woman will often carry heavy loads and commonly the smallest child on her back. In the rural setting, talking about proper maternal care is unrealistic. Child mortality is high and is accepted as a way of life. Statistical information about the rural areas is unreliable. Practically no rural villages have cemeteries. The dead are left at the outskirts of the settlement and disappear within a few days. The single major social occasion for the women is the brewing of beer made out of corn, millet, and sometimes even banana. A rusty 52-gallon steel barrel will do for the task. The women brew the beer, the men drink it, a remarkable division of labor. The beer is brownish and lukewarm, with small debris, etc. included. It has about a 3 to 4% alcohol content. For the outsider, it appears to be rather unappetizing, but after the first quart, the next one goes down easier. A drinking party may last 1 or 2 days, that is until the supply runs out. In a few instances, beekeeping is attempted by making a hive from a tree bark blocked at both ends with a small opening at one end. The honey is dark and strong-tasting, commonly mixed with small debris and pieces of the comb. In some cases, the hives may be hung on tree branches to prevent theft or depredation by animals. Hanging a hive requires remarkable climbing skills. African bees are notoriously bad-tempered, and to get the honey is not an easy task. But lacking sugar, the sweet taste is highly appreciated. The total taken from a hive is only a few pounds. In the bush of the savannah, the small villages or hamlets are abandoned after 20 to 30 years, as the ground around will be saturated by various germs and bacteria due to the total absence of latrines. The usual custom is to burn down the settlement, the remains are shown here, and to move to another site in the tribal area a few miles away and to rebuild. The rural folks associate the diseases and related problems to witches. The new village will be renamed, assuming that the witch will not be able to find it. The custom causes a remarkable problem when preparing maps for whatever purpose, with no reasonable solution in sight. The last months before the major seasonal harvest is generally a difficult time, as food supplies will run low for several reasons. The search is on for anything eatable, green shoots, tubers, or whatever. To get some meat, a highly desirable item, the people will also dig for mice using a clever strategy. They locate the mice by pushing down a strong, pliable grass stalk split at the end that will pinch some hair. The mice is fried with the hair on. Pregnant mice is preferred as it has more meat. Children learn early the technique of digging for mice, including small girls. Persistent hunger is an overwhelming consideration, especially for growing individuals. Moreover, in the traditional setting of the rural home, men eat first and the women and children what is left. That may not be much in general and will not change significantly as long the native cultures and attitudes persist. For the refined Western palate looking for exotic taste, fried mice is available at the local drinking place, an open-air shed serving the usual lukewarm beer and a plate of fried mice at 5 cents apiece in 1972. Consuming that item of haute cuisine does not seem to have a harmful effect, and in any case, whatever happens, it cannot be separated from other intestinal problems all too frequent in rural tropical Africa.